Mother abandons her baby on a deserted road, but what the bear did next will change everything. In the outskirts of Flagstaff, Arizona, where the pine forests whispered ancient secrets to the wind, a lone car's headlights pierced through the darkness of a particularly cold night. Behind the wheel, Emily's trembling hands gripped the steering wheel as tears streamed down her face. The bundle in the passenger seat stirred, and a soft whimper emerged from beneath the worn blue blanket. "I'm so sorry, my sweet Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I wish there was another way." The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her chest, but she knew she had no choice. The people hunting her were getting closer, and she couldn't let them find him. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Let us know which city you're watching us from. Stay tuned. Emily pulled over to the side of the deserted road, her headlights illuminating the dense forest ahead. With shaking hands, she lifted the bundle containing her newborn son. His tiny face, peaceful in sleep, made her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. She placed a gentle kiss on his forehead, inhaling his sweet baby scent one last time. "You'll be safe here," she murmured, though she wasn't sure if she was trying to convince herself or the sleeping infant. "Oh, someone will find you, someone good." She placed the bundle carefully on the ground, making sure the worn blue blanket was securely wrapped around him. A small medallion with an ancient symbol lay hidden within the folds of the blanket, the last connection to his heritage. As Emily drove away, her rearview mirror reflected the diminishing shape of the bundle until it disappeared completely into the darkness. The forest seemed to hold its breath, watching, waiting. The night air grew colder, and Ethan's soft cries echoed through the emptiness. From the depths of the forest, a massive figure emerged. The brown bear's powerful form moved with surprising grace as it approached the source of the crying. Its keen nose detected the scent of the infant, and something deeper, something that called to ancient instincts far beyond ordinary animal behavior. The bear's approach was cautious, each step deliberate. As it reached the bundle, instead of showing aggression, it displayed an almost human-like gentleness. The massive creature lowered its head, sniffing the blanket and the tiny human within. Ethan's cries softened, as if he somehow sensed he wasn't in danger. In a moment that defied natural law, the bear carefully gathered the bundle in its mighty jaws, handling the precious cargo with extraordinary delicacy. It turned toward the forest, carrying Ethan deeper into the wilderness. Through the moonlit paths and silent trees, the bear moved with purpose, as if guided by an unseen force. After what seemed like hours, lights appeared through the trees. A solitary cabin, warm and inviting in the cold night. Inside, Tom and Sarah Matthews were sharing a quiet evening, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. Tom sat in his favorite armchair, reading, while Sarah gazed out the window at the star-filled sky, her hand absently touching her stomach, a gesture born from years of unfulfilled dreams. A soft thud on their porch broke the silence. Tom rose from his chair, peering through the window. His sharp intake of breath drew Sarah's attention. "Sarah," he whispered, "you need to see this." Together they approached the door. Tom's hand hesitated on the handle as another sound reached them, a gentle growl, not threatening, but almost reassuring. With courage he didn't know he possessed, Tom opened the door. There, in the warm light spilling from their cabin, stood the largest bear they had ever seen. But it wasn't the bear's size that made them freeze, it was what the creature carried. With infinite care, the bear lowered the bundle to the porch. The blue blanket shifted, revealing a perfect baby boy, who opened his eyes and looked directly at Sarah. Sarah gasped, her maternal instincts overwhelming any fear she might have felt. The bear stepped back, its dark eyes meeting Sarah's for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. In that gaze, something passed between woman and beast, an understanding, a promise. As Sarah reached for the baby, the bear retreated into the shadows. Tom wrapped his arm around his wife as she cradled the infant. "Look," she whispered, "he's perfect." The baby cooed, reaching up with tiny fingers to touch Sarah's face. Tom noticed a small note tucked into the blanket. In hurried handwriting, it simply read, "His name is Ethan. Please keep him safe." The bear watched from the edge of the forest as the couple brought the baby inside, their shadows melding into one as they closed the door. Something stirred in the ancient woods, a power awakening, a destiny set in motion. For this was no ordinary night, and Ethan was no ordinary child. His journey was just beginning, and the forest would be watching, waiting, protecting. In the years to come, many would wonder about the strange marks in the snow that night, massive paw prints that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight, leading to and from the Matthews cabin. But only the forest knew the truth of that extraordinary night, and it would keep its secrets until the time was right. Time flowed like a gentle stream through the Matthews cabin, carrying Ethan from infancy into early childhood. At 5 years old, he was an extraordinary child, with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the ancient forest itself. Tom and Sarah had seamlessly woven him into the fabric of their lives, creating a home filled with love and wonder. But there was something different about Ethan, something that became more apparent as he grew. While other children his age feared the dark, Ethan found comfort in the night sounds of the forest. He would often sit by his window, listening intently to what he called the forest songs, a symphony of rustling leaves, animal calls, and something else, something deeper that only he seemed to hear. "Mama," Ethan said one morning over breakfast, his small hands wrapped around a cup of hot chocolate. The trees were talking again last night. Sarah exchanged a quick glance with Tom, who lowered his newspaper with interest. "What did they say, sweetheart?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice light despite her growing curiosity about her son's unique connection to their surroundings. "They said someone was watching over me, someone big and strong." Ethan's eyes sparkled as he spoke, completely unaware of how his parents' faces paled at his words. Tom and Sarah remembered that night 5 years ago all too well, the massive bear, the miracle it had delivered to their doorstep. They had never told Ethan the truth about his arrival, believing he was too young to understand. But sometimes, like now, they wondered if he somehow knew. That afternoon, while playing in the yard under Sarah's watchful eye, Ethan wandered closer to the forest's edge than usual. A butterfly with wings the color of sunset had caught his attention, leading him toward the tree line. Sarah was about to call him back when something extraordinary happened. A deep, gentle rumble echoed from the forest, like distant thunder on a clear day. Instead of showing fear, Ethan smiled and waved at the trees. "Hello," he called out cheerfully, as if greeting an old friend. Sarah froze, her heart racing as she remembered that same sound from years ago. "Ethan, honey, come back to the house now," she called, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. To her relief, he obeyed immediately, skipping back to her side. But his next words made her breath catch. "The forest guardian says it's okay, Mama. He's always watching out for me." That evening, after Ethan was tucked into bed, Tom and Sarah sat at their kitchen table, speaking in hushed tones. "Do you think we should tell him?" Sarah asked, wringing her hands. "About how he came to us?" Tom reached across the table, covering her hands with his own. "He's still so young, Sarah, and how do we explain something we don't even understand ourselves?" Their conversation was interrupted by a sound they hadn't heard in years, heavy footsteps on their porch. They rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain just in time to see a massive shadow disappear into the trees. On the porch lay a small wooden toy, a perfectly carved bear, smooth and warm to the touch, as if it had been held in gentle paws for hours. The next morning, Ethan's eyes lit up at the sight of the toy. "The forest guardian left this for me," he exclaimed, hugging the wooden bear to his chest. His parents watched in amazement as he ran his small fingers over the carvings, symbols they hadn't noticed before, ancient markings that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. As Ethan grew, his connection to the forest deepened. He began to show an uncanny ability to predict weather changes, often warning his parents of approaching storms hours before the first clouds appeared. Animals seemed drawn to him. Birds would land nearby when he sat outside, deer would pause their grazing to watch him pass, and butterflies would dance around him as if he were part of their aerial ballet. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Ethan sat on the porch steps, the wooden bear clutched in his hands. Sarah watched through the kitchen window, as her son appeared to be having an animated conversation with the empty air in front of him. "The forest has secrets," he told her later that night as she tucked him into bed. "Big secrets. But it's okay. They're good secrets, Mama. They're waiting for the right time to tell them." Sarah smoothed his hair back from his forehead, noticing how his eyes seemed to reflect the starlight streaming through his window. "And how will you know when it's the right time, sweetheart?" Ethan smiled, a smile that seemed far too wise for his young face. "The Guardian will let me know. He's teaching me how to listen." He yawned, snuggling deeper under his covers. "And Mama, he says thank you for taking care of me that night." Sarah sat there long after Ethan had drifted off to sleep, watching the shadows from the forest dance across his peaceful face. Outside, a gentle breeze stirred the trees, carrying with it the sound of that familiar, comforting rumble. The forest was singing its lullaby, and somewhere in the darkness, ancient eyes kept their vigilant watch over the sleeping child who bridged two worlds. As 13-year-old Ethan traversed the familiar paths of the forest surrounding his home, his footsteps barely made a sound on the carpet of pine needles. Years of exploring had taught him the forest's secret rhythms, its hidden language. The wooden bear pendant, carved all those years ago, hung from a leather cord around his neck, a constant reminder of his mysterious connection to these woods. This morning felt different. The air hummed with an energy he couldn't quite explain, and the usual chorus of birdsong seemed muted, expectant. Ethan had woken before dawn, driven by an inexplicable urgency that pulled him toward the heart of the forest. He'd left a note for his parents, knowing they trusted him in these woods more than anywhere else. "Something's changing," he whispered to the trees. The wind rustled through the branches in response, and he could have sworn it was pointing him in a specific direction. Following his instincts, Ethan veered off his usual path, deeper into the unexplored territory. The morning light filtered through the canopy, creating patterns that seemed to form arrows on the forest floor. Ethan had learned long ago that in these woods, nothing was purely coincidental. He followed the light patterns until they led him to an ancient oak tree, its trunk wider than any he'd seen before. As he approached, the wooden bear pendant grew warm against his chest. Ethan placed his hand on the rough bark, and a familiar rumble echoed through the trees, the same sound that had comforted him throughout his childhood. But today, it seemed to carry a message. Looking down, Ethan noticed something peculiar about the tree's massive roots. They formed an unusual pattern, almost like they were protecting something. Following his intuition, he began to carefully dig between two large roots where the earth seemed slightly disturbed. His fingers struck something solid, a box, old but well preserved, sealed with intricate carvings similar to those on his wooden bear. With trembling hands, Ethan lifted it from its earthen cradle. The box was surprisingly warm to the touch, as if it had been waiting for him. Before he could open it, a sound made him look up. There, standing in a shaft of sunlight, was Luna. He had seen her occasionally in town, always watching him from a distance with knowing eyes. She appeared to be only a few years older than him, but something about her presence suggested ancient wisdom. "I wondered when you would find it," Luna said, her voice carrying the same melodic quality as the forest itself. "The Guardian has been leading you here for years, preparing you for this moment." Ethan wasn't surprised by her appearance or her words. Somehow, he had always known she was part of the mystery surrounding his life. "The Guardian? You mean the bear?" Luna smiled, settling gracefully on a fallen log nearby. "The Great Bear is much more than just an animal, Ethan. Just as you are much more than just a boy who loves the forest." With Luna's presence lending a sense of ceremony to the moment, Ethan opened the box. Inside, he found photographs yellowed with age. A woman with his eyes holding a baby, standing next to a man whose smile matched his own. Beneath the photos lay a stack of letters, their paper thin and delicate. "Your mother wanted you to have these when you were ready," Luna explained softly. "Emily knew you would need to understand where you came from to know where you're going." Ethan's fingers trembled as he lifted out a medallion, identical to the one hidden in his baby blanket all those years ago. The symbol carved into its surface seemed to pulse with an inner light. "What does it mean?" "It's the mark of the forest guardians," Luna replied. "Your family has protected these lands and their secrets for generations. Emily and Daniel, your parents, they were carrying on that legacy when they had to make the hardest choice of their lives." A warm breeze swept through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of pine and something else, a hint of magic that Ethan had always sensed but never fully understood. The Great Bear's rumble echoed again, closer this time, affirming Luna's words. "But why leave me? Why not keep me and protect me themselves?" The questions that had lived in his heart for years finally found voice. Luna's eyes filled with compassion. "The answer lies in those letters, Ethan. But know this, everything they did to keep you safe, to give you the chance to grow up protected by both the forest's magic and the love of Tom and Sarah." As if summoned by their names, Ethan thought of his adoptive parents, their unwavering love, their acceptance of his unique connection to the forest, their quiet support of his growing powers. "They're my family too," he said firmly. "Of course they are," Luna agreed. "Love isn't limited by blood or magic. The Great Bear knew exactly where to take you that night. Tom and Sarah's love has been as crucial to your protection as any ancient magic." Ethan looked down at the contents of the box again. Understanding that he held pieces of a puzzle he'd been trying to solve his entire life. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for him to take the next step on his journey. "There's more you need to know," Luna said, standing up. "But first you need to read those letters. Understanding your past is the key to embracing your future. When you're ready, I'll be here to help you understand your role as a guardian." As Luna melted back into the forest shadows, Ethan sat beneath the ancient oak, the box of his history in his lap. The Great Bear's presence lingered nearby. A constant guardian, as Ethan prepared to uncover the truth about who he was and why his destiny was so intricately tied to these mysterious woods. The morning sun climbed higher, casting dappled shadows through the leaves as Ethan opened the first letter. His mother's handwriting flowed across the page, beginning to tell a story that would change everything he thought he knew about himself and his place in the world. With hands that trembled slightly, Ethan unfolded the first letter. The paper was delicate, carrying the faint scent of pine needles and something else, perhaps the lingering traces of his mother's perfume. The morning sun filtered through the canopy above as he began to read. "My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, you've already begun to feel the pull of your destiny. I've written these letters over the past few months, knowing that someday you would need to understand why I made the hardest decision any mother could make. First, you must know that leaving you that night broke my heart in ways I never thought possible, but I knew the Great Bear would protect you. Our family has been connected to this ancient guardian for generations. We are part of something larger than ourselves, something as old as the forests themselves." Ethan paused, his fingers tracing over the words. The wooden bear pendant seemed to grow warmer against his chest, as if responding to his mother's written words. He continued reading. "Our family, the Blackwoods, has been entrusted with a sacred duty for centuries. We are guardians, protectors of the delicate balance between the natural world and the human realm. The medallion you wear marks you as one of us, a bridge between two worlds. Your father, Daniel, discovered something terrible before you were born. A group of people, calling themselves the Horizon Corporation, had learned about the ancient power that flows through these lands. They wanted to harness it, to use it for their own gain, not understanding that such power was never meant to be controlled. Daniel infiltrated their organization, trying to protect our secrets. But they discovered his true identity. The last time I saw him, he warned me that they were coming for us. He made me promise to protect you at any cost." A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and Ethan could have sworn he heard whispers in the wind. Luna's presence lingered nearby, silent but supportive as he uncovered the truth of his heritage. He pulled out the next letter. "The power that runs through your veins is special, Ethan. You'll begin to notice things as you grow. A deeper connection to nature, the ability to sense changes in the forest, to communicate with its creatures. These aren't just childhood fantasies. They're your birthright. The Great Bear who brought you to Tom and Sarah wasn't just any animal. It's an ancient spirit, a guardian who has protected our family for generations. It chose them specifically, knowing their hearts were pure and their love would give you the stable foundation you would need. I watch you sometimes, from a distance. Every time I see you playing in the forest, talking to the trees, or sensing the approach of storms, my heart swells with pride. You're growing into exactly who you're meant to be, even without knowing your true heritage. Ethan's vision blurred with tears as he realized his mother had been closer than he'd ever known. He wiped his eyes and continued with the next letter. There's so much more you need to learn about your abilities and your role as a guardian. Luna, if she hasn't already revealed herself to you, will help guide you. She comes from another ancient family of guardians, and her knowledge will be invaluable as you discover your powers. The Horizon Corporation is still out there, though they've gone quiet in recent years. Your father and I believe they're still searching for ways to tap into the forest's power. This is why you must learn to control and understand your abilities, not just to protect yourself, but to protect the delicate balance that keeps our world safe. The forest around Ethan seemed to pulse with energy as he absorbed his mother's words. Memories of strange occurrences throughout his childhood began to make sense. The way animals would seek him out when they were injured, how he could sense approaching weather changes, his ability to find lost things in the forest. The final letter in the stack was shorter, but its words carried the weight of prophecy. My brave boy, by now you must have so many questions. Know that everything that has happened has led to this moment. Your father and I are working to dismantle the Horizon Corporation from within, but our fight isn't over. One day, when you're ready, you'll play a crucial role in protecting not just our forests, but all the ancient places that still hold magic in this world. Trust in the Great Bear's guidance, trust in Luna's wisdom, and most importantly, trust in yourself and the love that surrounds you. Both from your birth family and from Tom and Sarah, who have given you the gift of a childhood filled with joy and security. You are the bridge, Ethan, between the old world and the new, between humanity and nature, between what was and what could be. Your journey is just beginning. And though I can't be there to guide you personally, know that my love and protection are always with you. With all my heart, Mom. As Ethan folded the last letter, the clearing fell into a profound silence. Even the birds seemed to pause their songs, sensing the magnitude of the moment. Luna emerged from the shadows, her presence offering comfort as Ethan processed everything he had learned. "But there's more," she said softly, gesturing to the box. "The medallion your mother mentioned. It's not just a symbol, it's a key to understanding your powers and to finding them." Ethan pulled out the medallion, watching as it caught the sunlight and seemed to glow from within. The symbol carved into its surface, a tree intertwined with a bear's silhouette, suddenly felt less like a decoration and more like a map to his destiny. The Great Bear's rumble echoed through the trees once more, but this time, Ethan understood it wasn't just a sound. It was a call to action, the beginning of his true journey as a guardian of the forest. The weeks following Ethan's discovery of the letters brought dramatic changes to his life. Under Luna's guidance, he began to understand that what he had always considered simple intuition was actually something far more profound. They met each day at dawn in a hidden clearing, where Luna began teaching him the ancient ways of the Guardians. "Close your eyes," Luna instructed one misty morning, her voice carrying the same melodic quality that reminded Ethan of wind through leaves. "Feel the energy flowing through the earth beneath your feet. It's not separate from you, it's part of you, just as you are part of it." Ethan stood barefoot on the forest floor, feeling the cool moss between his toes. As he concentrated, something extraordinary happened. A subtle vibration began to pulse through his body, as if his heartbeat was synchronizing with the very rhythm of the forest. "What you're feeling," Luna explained, "is the life force that connects all living things. The Guardians call it the verdant pulse. It's what gives us our abilities, our connection to nature." As Ethan focused on this new sensation, he became aware of everything around him in startling detail. The intricate network of roots beneath the soil, the sap flowing through the trees, even the tiny insects making their way through the underbrush. It was overwhelming, yet somehow familiar, like remembering something he'd always known but had forgotten. "This is incredible," he whispered, opening his eyes to find small wildflowers had sprouted in a circle around his feet. Luna smiled, unsurprised. Your power is already stronger than I expected, she observed. The forest responds naturally to your presence, but with great power comes great responsibility. You must learn to control it, to use it wisely. Their training sessions intensified. Luna taught him to channel the verdant pulse in different ways, to heal injured animals, to encourage plants to grow, and most importantly, to sense disturbances in the natural balance. The great bear often watched these sessions from the shadows, its presence a constant reminder of Ethan's unique heritage. One afternoon, as Ethan practiced communicating with a family of rabbits, he felt a sudden sharp pain in his chest. The rabbits scattered as he doubled over, gasping. "What's happening?" he managed to ask through gritted teeth. Luna was immediately at his side, her face grave. "You're feeling the forest's pain. Someone is causing harm nearby." This is another aspect of being a guardian. We feel the earth's suffering as our own. Following the sensation like a compass needle pointing north, Ethan and Luna discovered a group of surveyors marking trees for clearing. The Horizon Corporation's logo was clearly visible on their equipment. "They're testing our defenses," Luna whispered, pulling Ethan behind a large oak. "Seeing how far they can push into protected territory." Ethan's medallion grew warm against his chest as anger and determination coursed through him. Without thinking, he placed his hand on the ground and closed his eyes. The verdant pulse responded immediately, surging through him like a tide. Around the surveyors, the forest seemed to come alive. Roots emerged from the soil, gently but firmly moving their equipment. The wind picked up, causing the marked trees to shed their ribbons. Birds swooped down, creating enough chaos to drive the workers back. Luna watched in amazement as Ethan orchestrated this defensive display without aggression or harm, simply showing the surveyors that the forest itself objected to their presence. "That was remarkable," she said after the surveyors had retreated. "Most guardians take years to learn that level of control. You managed to protect the forest without causing fear or harm." Ethan slumped against a tree, exhausted but proud. It just felt right. Like the forest was working with me, not just responding to my commands. "That's exactly what makes you special, Ethan. You don't try to control nature, you work in harmony with it. It's why the Great Bear chose to protect you, why your parents fought so hard to keep you safe." That evening, as Ethan walked home, he felt different. The forest had always been his playground, but now it was becoming his partner, his responsibility. The weight of his newfound knowledge and powers should have felt heavy, but instead, it felt like finding a piece of himself he hadn't known was missing. Tom and Sarah noticed the change in him too. They saw how he carried himself with new purpose, how the local wildlife seemed to gather around their house more frequently, how plants in their garden flourished beyond explanation. "You know you can tell us anything, right?" Sarah said one evening as she watched Ethan tenderly caring for an injured robin he'd found. "We've always known you were special." Ethan looked at his adoptive mother, seeing the unconditional love in her eyes. He realized that being a guardian didn't mean he had to keep secrets from those he loved most. "Actually, Mum, there's something I need to tell you and Dad. About who I am, about who I'm becoming." The Great Bear's approving rumble echoed through the trees as Ethan began to share his story with the people who had given him a home when he needed it most. As he spoke, the medallion glowed softly, marking the moment when his two worlds, the magical and the mundane, began to merge into something new and wonderful. Tom and Sarah sat in stunned silence as Ethan finished explaining everything, the letters from his birth mother, Luna's training, his emerging powers, and the Great Bear's role in his life. The evening light filtered through their cabin windows, casting long shadows across the living room floor. So that night, Sarah finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "When the bear brought you to us, it wasn't just coincidence. It was destiny." Ethan nodded, watching their faces carefully. The wooden bear pendant around his neck seemed to pulse with warmth, offering silent support. "The Great Bear chose you specifically. It knew you would love me and protect me while I grew into who I needed to become." Tom leaned forward in his chair, running a hand through his graying hair. "All these years, we've seen the strange things that happen around you, the way animals behave, how the garden thrives, your connection to the forest. We just never imagined." "I know it's a lot to take in," Ethan said softly, but I needed you to know the truth. You're my family, and I don't want to keep secrets from you." Sarah rose from her seat and wrapped Ethan in a tight embrace. "Oh, sweetheart, you'll always be our son. Powers or no powers, guardian or not, nothing changes that." A knock at the door interrupted their emotional moment. Luna stood on the porch, her usual serene expression replaced by one of urgency. "Ethan, we need you. Something's happening in the forest." Tom and Sarah exchanged worried glances, but their concern was mixed with pride as they watched their son straighten up, suddenly looking older than his years. "Go," Tom said firmly. "We'll be here when you get back." Ethan and Luna raced through the darkening forest, following the pull of the verdant pulse. The energy felt wrong, discordant, like an orchestra playing out of tune. They emerged into a clearing where several large machines stood silent in the twilight, bearing the Horizon Corporation logo. "Yeah, they're planning to begin clearing at dawn," Luna explained, her voice tight with concern. "They've already started setting up equipment. The forest is crying out. Can you feel it?" Ethan could indeed feel it, a deep ache in his chest that grew stronger as they approached the site. The medallion around his neck grew hot, and suddenly he knew what he had to do. "I need your help," he told Luna. "The forest will protect itself, but it needs us to guide its power. Like conducting an orchestra." Luna's eyes widened as she understood. Together they placed their hands on the ground, channeling the verdant pulse. The response was immediate and extraordinary. Thick vines began growing at an impossible speed, wrapping around the machines. Tree roots shifted beneath the earth, creating uneven ground that would make it impossible for heavy equipment to operate. Overhead, branches wove together into a dense canopy, blocking access from above. But Ethan didn't stop there. With his newfound confidence and power, he reached deeper into the forest's consciousness. Images began appearing in the clearing, ethereal projections of ancient forests, indigenous people living in harmony with the land, and the magical creatures that once roamed freely. The great bear materialized among these visions, its form massive and majestic. "What are you doing?" Luna whispered in awe. "Showing them why this place matters," Ethan replied, his voice resonating with power. "The forest is sharing its memories." As if on cue, they heard voices approaching, the work crew arriving early to prepare for the morning. They stopped dead in their tracks at the sight before them, machines entangled in living vines, ancient visions dancing through the air, and two young people standing in the midst of it all, their forms seeming to glow with an inner light. "This forest is protected," Ethan declared, his voice carrying the weight of generations of guardians. "It always has been, and it always will be." The workers backed away, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. As they retreated, Ethan felt a familiar presence. The great bear had emerged from the shadows, standing beside him in physical form. The ancient guardian's appearance sealed the deal. The workers fled, leaving their equipment behind. Luna turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with pride and amazement. "That was incredible. You didn't just protect the forest, you showed them its soul. No one has managed to manifest the forest's memories like that in generations." As the magical visions faded, Ethan felt exhausted but fulfilled. The forest hummed with contentment around them, and he could sense that this place would remain untouched. The Horizon Corporation would have to find another way to achieve their goals. Walking home in the pre-dawn light, Ethan felt different, stronger, more confident in his abilities and his place in both worlds. The great bear accompanied them to the edge of the woods, where Tom and Sarah waited anxiously on their porch. "We saw the lights in the forest," Sarah said, hurrying to embrace him. "Are you all right?" Ethan hugged his parents tightly, grateful for their unwavering support. "I'm better than all right. For the first time. I understand exactly who I am and what I'm meant to do." Tom placed a hand on his son's shoulder, looking past him to where the great bear stood at the forest's edge. "We always knew you were meant for something extraordinary. We just didn't realize how extraordinary." As the first rays of sunrise painted the sky, Ethan stood with his family, both human and mystical, feeling the pieces of his life finally falling into place. The forest's magic pulsed through him. No longer a mystery, but a gift he was learning to embrace. The medallion around his neck glowed softly, a reminder that his journey was far from over, but he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The autumn morning dawned crisp and clear, with mist curling through the trees like ghostly fingers. Ethan sat cross-legged in his favorite clearing, practicing the meditation techniques Luna had taught him, when a familiar warmth from his medallion alerted him to another presence. "Your power has grown immensely," a soft voice said from behind him. "Just like I always knew it would." Ethan's eyes flew open, his heart racing. He knew that voice. He'd heard it in his dreams, in memories he didn't know he had. Slowly, he turned to face the speaker. Emily stood at the edge of the clearing, her eyes, so like his own, filled with tears. She looked exactly like the woman in the photographs he'd found, though with a few more lines around her eyes and strands of silver in her dark hair. The great bear stood beside her, as if escorting her to this reunion. "Mom," Ethan whispered, his voice catching in his throat. Despite all his powers, all his training, he felt like a small child in that moment. Emily took a tentative step forward. "I've waited so long for this moment. Watching you from afar was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, after leaving you that night." Before either of them could move, Luna burst into the clearing, her expression a mixture of surprise and concern. But when she saw Emily, she relaxed and bowed her head respectfully. "The timing is right," Luna said. "The forest itself confirms it." Ethan stood, his legs shaky. "Why now? Why come back after all this time?" "Because you're ready," Emily replied, her voice steady despite her tears. "And because we need you, your father. We've discovered something about the Horizon Corporation that changes everything." The mention of his father made Ethan's heart skip a beat. "He's alive. Where is he?" "He's deep undercover within Horizon," Emily explained, moving closer. "What we thought was just a corporation trying to exploit the forest's power is something far more dangerous. They've discovered ancient texts that speak of a ritual, one that could sever the connection between the human world and the natural realm forever." The forest around them seemed to shudder at her words. Ethan felt the verdant pulse quicken, like a heartbeat growing faster with fear. "If they succeed," Luna added gravely, "all the ancient magic, all the connections between guardians and nature, everything that maintains the balance, it would vanish. The consequences would be catastrophic." Emily reached into her jacket and pulled out a worn leather journal. "Your father has been gathering evidence, tracking their movements. He sent this to me last week." She held it out to Ethan with trembling hands. As Ethan took the journal, images flashed through his mind. A man's hands writing in it by candlelight, hurried sketches of ancient symbols, maps marked with locations he didn't recognize. He realized he was seeing fragments of his father's memories, stored within the pages themselves. "The Horizon Corporation believes they're doing the right thing," Emily continued. "They think by severing the connection between humans and nature, they'll free humanity from what they see as primitive superstition. They don't understand that this connection is what keeps our world in balance." The great bear moved closer, its massive form radiating protective energy. Ethan felt its consciousness brush against his mind, sharing images of ancient times when humans and nature existed in perfect harmony. "But why do you need me?" Ethan asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Because you're unique, honey," Emily said softly. "Most guardians are either born into their power like me, or they develop abilities through years of training like Luna. But you're a bridge between worlds in a way no one has been before. Your connection to the forest is natural yet cultivated, wild yet controlled. You understand both the human world and the ancient ways in a way few others can." Luna stepped forward. "The prophecies speak of one who would unite the old ways with the new, someone who could show humanity a better path forward. We believe that's you, Ethan." The weight of their words settled over the clearing like a heavy mist. Ethan looked down at his father's journal, then at his medallion, and finally at his mother's hopeful face. "There's more you need to know," Emily said, reaching for his hand, "about your father, about your true heritage, and about why the Great Bear chose you specifically. But first, I think it's time you met someone else who's been waiting to see you." As if on cue, another figure emerged from the trees, a tall man with Ethan's smile and kind eyes. Daniel Blackwood looked exactly like his photos, though weathered by years of secret keeping and undercover work. "Son," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. The forest seemed to hold its breath as father and son faced each other for the first time in 13 years. The great bear watched the reunion with ancient eyes, while Luna discreetly wiped away tears. The verdant pulse surged around them, responding to the powerful emotions in the clearing. Flowers bloomed out of season, and the very air seemed to shimmer with magical energy. In that moment, Ethan understood that his journey was far from over. It was, in fact, just beginning. The Matthews cabin had never felt so full of both people and secrets. Tom and Sarah sat hand in hand on their worn sofa, watching as Emily and Daniel shared the full story with their son. The great bear kept vigilant watch outside the window, its massive form a comforting presence in the gathering dusk. "The medallion you wear," Daniel began, his voice carrying years of hidden knowledge, "isn't just a symbol of the Guardians. It's one of 5 ancient artifacts created by the first Guardians, those who originally forged the bond between humanity and nature." Emily pulled out her own medallion, identical to Ethan's. Each medallion represents a different aspect of the natural world: earth, water, air, fire, and spirit. Together, they maintain the balance that keeps our world whole. "Your medallion," Luna added, "is the spirit medallion, the most powerful of all. It's been dormant for generations, waiting for the right guardian to awaken its full potential." Ethan touched his medallion, feeling its familiar warmth. "Is that why the great bear chose me?" Daniel nodded, opening his journal to a page filled with intricate drawings. "The prophecy speaks of a guardian who would be raised between worlds, born of ancient power but nurtured by pure human love. The great bear recognized you as that guardian the moment you were born. The Horizon Corporation has discovered the existence of these medallions," Emily continued, her expression grave. "They believe that by gathering all 5 and performing their ritual during the upcoming celestial alignment, they can permanently sever the connection between humanity and the natural world." Sarah leaned forward, her maternal instincts flaring. "But why would they want to do such a thing?" "They believe they're saving humanity," Daniel explained. "Their leaders think that by cutting off our connection to nature's magic, they'll force human evolution toward a more technological future. They don't understand that this connection is vital for the survival of both worlds." Luna spread out an ancient map on the coffee table. "They already have 2 medallions, fire and air. They're searching for water, which is protected by the Guardian clans in the Pacific Northwest. Earth remains safe with the indigenous Guardians in the mountains, but it's your spirit medallion they want most, Ethan. Without it, their ritual cannot succeed." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the magnitude of the situation. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the worried whispers of the forest. "There's something else," Emily said softly, exchanging a meaningful look with Daniel. "The reason we had to hide you, Ethan. The Horizon Corporation discovered an ancient text suggesting that the spirit medallion's power could only be fully awakened by someone of mixed heritage, someone with both guardian and human blood." Daniel's hands clenched into fists. "When they learned of your mother's pregnancy, they became obsessed. They believed that our child, you, would be the key to controlling all 5 medallions. They wanted to raise you themselves, to use your powers for their own ends. That's why we had to leave you," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We couldn't let them find you before you were ready to understand and control your powers." Tom stood up, his voice firm. "And you brought him to us. Through the Great Bear, you made sure he would have a safe home, a normal childhood. The most powerful magic often grows best in the soil of ordinary love," Luna observed. Smiling at Tom and Sarah, Ethan looked around at all the people who had shaped his life, his birth parents, who sacrificed everything to protect him. Tom and Sarah, who gave him love and stability. Luna, who helped him understand his powers, and the Great Bear, his constant protector. "So what do we do now?" he asked, standing up with newfound determination. "How do we stop them?" Daniel opened his journal to another page, revealing a complex diagram. "The celestial alignment they need for their ritual happens in 3 days. We need to infiltrate their headquarters and prevent them from gathering all 5 medallions. But more importantly, we need to show them the truth about the connection they're trying to destroy. That's where your unique gift comes in, Emily explained. Your ability to show others the forest's memories, to make them feel the connection between all living things. It's more powerful than any ritual. You can help them understand what they're about to lose. Luna stepped forward, her expression serious, but it won't be easy. The Horizon Corporation has resources, technology, and people who truly believe they're doing the right thing. We'll need every ally we can gather. As if in response, the great bear's rumble echoed through the cabin. One by one, animals began appearing at the windows. Wolves, deer, eagles, and countless others. All drawn by Ethan's power and their shared purpose. Sarah reached out and squeezed Ethan's hand. Whatever you need, we're here for you. All of us. Ethan looked down at his medallion, which now glowed with an inner light he'd never seen before. He could feel the verdant pulse flowing through him stronger than ever, carrying with it the hopes and fears of both the natural world and the people he loved. Then let's make a plan, he said, his voice carrying the weight of both worlds he was born to bridge. It's time to show the Horizon Corporation that breaking the connection between humanity and nature won't save anyone, but protecting it might save us all. The room filled with renewed purpose as they began to strategize, while outside, the forest itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when its youngest guardian would face his greatest challenge yet. Dawn broke over the Horizon Corporation's gleaming headquarters, its glass and steel structure, a stark contrast to the natural world it sought to separate from humanity. Ethan, Luna, and their allies stood at the forest's edge, watching as employees began arriving for what they thought would be an ordinary day. The spirit medallion pulsed against Ethan's chest, responding to the presence of the other medallions within the building. Through their shared connection, he could sense the fire and air medallions, their power distorted by the corporation's influence. Everyone knows their roles, Daniel asked, his years of undercover work evident in his careful planning. The group nodded. Emily and Luna would lead the Guardian clans in creating a diversion, while Tom and Sarah coordinated with local environmental activists who had gathered to protest the corporation's latest development plans. Remember, Emily said softly to Ethan, Psyop power isn't just about controlling nature. It's about showing others the truth they've forgotten. The Great Bear stood beside Ethan, its massive form invisible to ordinary eyes thanks to Luna's concealment spell. Ethan placed his hand on the ancient Guardian's fur, drawing strength from their connection. It's time, Luna announced, noting the position of the sun. The celestial alignment would begin in less than an hour. The protest started peacefully, with Tom and Sarah leading chants about environmental protection. As planned, this drew security's attention to the front of the building. Meanwhile, Emily and Luna began their part, calling upon ancient Guardian magic to create a spectacular display of natural phenomena around the building. Winds that whispered ancient truths, plants that grew in impossible patterns, and animals that emerged from the surrounding area to stand in silent witness. Ethan, Daniel, and the Great Bear used this coverage to enter through a service entrance Daniel had discovered during his undercover work. The medallion guided them through the building's sterile corridors toward the executive floor, where the ritual preparations were underway. They found CEO Victoria Sterling in a converted conference room, surrounded by ancient texts and modern technology. The fire and air medallions floated in a containment field of her own design, their power being siphoned into her machines. I wondered when the final piece would arrive, Victoria said without turning around. The spirit medallion and its guardian. Her voice held no malice, only absolute conviction in her cause. You don't understand what you're trying to destroy, Ethan said, stepping forward. The Great Bear's low growl echoed through the room, now visible to all. Victoria finally turned, her eyes widening at the sight of the massive creature, but quickly regaining her composure. I understand perfectly. Humanity has outgrown its dependence on nature's mysteries. We need to break free from these primitive connections to reach our full potential. Let me show you what you're really about to lose, Ethan offered, holding out his hand. His medallion glowed brightly, and the verdant pulse surged through him with unprecedented power. The room transformed around them. The sterile walls dissolved into visions of ancient forests, pristine oceans, and untamed skies. But these weren't just images. They were living memories carried by the land itself. Victoria gasped as she felt what Ethan felt. The deep joy of a wolf pack running under the moon, the ancient wisdom of thousand-year-old trees, the intricate dance of pollinating bees that kept the world alive. She experienced the profound connection that linked all living things, the very force her company sought to sever. "This is who we are," Ethan said softly, his voice carrying the weight of generations, not separate from nature, but part of it. "The connection you're trying to break isn't holding us back. It's keeping us whole." The other executives and scientists in the room stood transfixed as Ethan's power washed over them. The Great Bear moved to the containment field, and, with one powerful swipe, shattered it. The fire and air medallions flew to join with Ethan's spirit medallion, their combined power filling the room with pure, natural energy. But Victoria wasn't ready to surrender her vision. She lunged for a control panel, desperate to initiate the severing ritual before the alignment passed. "We've worked too long for this. Humanity needs to be free." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As Victoria's hand reached for the button, every plant in the corporate gardens responded to Ethan's power. Vines burst through windows, flowers bloomed through cracks in the floor, and the very building seemed to come alive with nature's energy. The Great Bear roared, not in anger but in triumph, as the three medallions in Ethan's possession began to spin in the air, creating a vortex of pure natural energy. Through this power, Ethan did something unprecedented. He opened not just Victoria's eyes, but her heart to the truth. She fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the reality of what she had nearly destroyed. The other executives watched in awe as their sterile, controlled environment transformed into a testament to the living world's power and beauty. "The connection between humanity and nature isn't our weakness," Ethan declared, his voice carrying the wisdom of both worlds he bridged. "It's our greatest strength. Every technological advancement, every human achievement has its roots in the natural world. We don't need to break free from nature. We need to remember how to work in harmony with it." The celestial alignment reached its peak, but instead of severing the connection between worlds, it strengthened it. The combined power of the medallions, guided by Ethan's unique ability to bridge both worlds, created something entirely new. A vision of a future where technology and nature worked in perfect balance, each enhancing the other. As the sun began to set, the Horizon Corporation's headquarters had been transformed. Where there had been sterile offices, now gardens bloomed. The building itself seemed to breathe with new life, a testament to the possibility of harmony between the human and natural worlds. Victoria looked at Ethan with new understanding. "We were wrong about what humanity needed," she admitted. Perhaps you could show us a better way forward." The Great Bear rumbled its approval as Ethan nodded, knowing that this wasn't an ending, but a new beginning. The real work, of building bridges between worlds, of healing ancient wounds, of finding a path forward that honored both progress and preservation, was just beginning. Outside, the protesters and guardians alike watched in amazement as the building seemed to transform before their eyes, becoming a living symbol of the very harmony it had once sought to destroy. And in the midst of it all, a young man stood with a bear at his side, ready to guide humanity toward a future where no one would have to choose between progress and preservation, a future where both worlds could thrive together. 5 years after the transformation of the Horizon Corporation, the building that once symbolized the separation between humanity and nature had become something extraordinary. Now known as the Harmony Center, its living walls and integrated ecosystems served as a global model for sustainable architecture. But more importantly, it housed the headquarters of the Forest Guardians Foundation, Ethan's revolutionary organization that bridged the gap between modern technology and ancient wisdom. Ethan stood at the window of his office, watching as groups of schoolchildren explored the building's rooftop garden. His medallion caught the morning light, its glow a constant reminder of the responsibility he carried. At 23, he had grown into his role as a bridge between worlds, his powers stronger than ever but tempered by wisdom and experience. The latest results from the regeneration project are in, Luna announced, entering the office with a tablet in hand. She had remained his closest advisor and friend, helping him navigate both his growing powers and his role as a leader. The forests are recovering at 3 times the expected rate. Ethan smiled, remembering how it all began. And the technology integration. Victoria's team has outdone themselves, Luna replied. The former CEO had become one of their strongest allies, redirecting her brilliant mind toward creating technology that worked in harmony with nature rather than against it. The new biosensors can detect environmental changes even before the Guardians feel them through the verdant pulse. The Great Bear, who now freely roamed the building's specially designed corridors, entered the office and settled beside Ethan's desk. Age had not diminished its majesty, and its role as his protector had evolved into that of a trusted partner in their shared mission. "Mom and Dad are here," Ethan said, sensing his birth parents approaching. Emily and Daniel had fully reintegrated into his life, working alongside Tom and Sarah to support his vision. The 2 sets of parents had formed an unconventional but loving extended family, each bringing their unique strengths to the Foundation's mission. Emily entered first, her face glowing with pride as she surveyed what her son had built. "The Indigenous Guardian Councils are ready to begin the knowledge-sharing program," she announced. "They're impressed with how you've managed to preserve the sacred while embracing innovation." Daniel followed, carrying an ancient text carefully preserved in a modern stasis field, a perfect symbol of their new approach. "And the International Summit next week is fully booked. Leaders from around the world want to learn about implementing the Harmony protocols." Speaking of harmony, Tom's voice came from the doorway, where he and Sarah stood with bright smiles. "Your mother and I finished setting up the new Children's Education Center downstairs. You should see how the kids react when they first feel their connection to nature." Ethan's heart swelled as he looked at all the people who had shaped his journey. "And we've come so far," he said softly. "But sometimes I still feel like that boy in the forest, just beginning to understand his place in the world." Sarah crossed the room to hug him. "That's because you've kept your heart open, honey. You never lost sight of what matters most, the connection between all living things." The medallion pulsed warmly, and Ethan felt the familiar surge of the verdant pulse. But now, instead of just forest memories, he could share visions of the future they were building, one where children grew up understanding their connection to nature, where technology served to protect rather than exploit, where ancient wisdom and modern innovation danced in perfect balance. "There's someone here to see you," Luna said with a knowing smile. "She's waiting in the meditation garden." Ethan made his way through the building's organic corridors to the central garden, where Eleanor waited. The young woman who had once been just another protester had become an integral part of his life, her passion for environmental law complementing his role as a guardian. Their love had grown naturally, like a seedling reaching for the sun. "I thought I'd find you here," Elena said, taking his hand. "The surveys from the latest protected sites just came in. We're making a difference, Ethan. Real change is happening." Above them, the glass dome of the garden reflected the sky, while below, the foundations of the building pulsed with the Earth's natural energy. It was a perfect metaphor for what they had achieved, a space where the human world and natural world didn't just coexist but strengthened each other. The Great Bear appeared at the garden's entrance, and with it came a familiar presence that made Ethan smile. A much smaller bear cub tumbled into view, playing among the flowers. The ancient guardian had found its own way to ensure the future, just as Ethan had. "You know," Elena said, watching the bears with wonder, "when you first told me about your vision for the future, it seemed like an impossible dream. But look at what you've created, what we've all created together." Ethan pulled her close, feeling the pulse of life all around them, in the plants that grew throughout the building, in the advanced technology that monitored and protected the environment, in the people who came here to learn and understand, and in the ancient magic that still flowed through it all. "It was never about choosing between progress and preservation," he said, echoing the lesson he had learned years ago. "It was about finding the wisdom to embrace both, to understand that true progress can only come when we honor our connection to the natural world." As the sun set over the Harmony Center, Its light caught the medallion one last time, sending rainbow reflections dancing across the garden. The great bear rumbled contentedly, the cub now sleepy at its feet. In that moment, Ethan felt the truth of his journey more clearly than ever. He wasn't just a bridge between worlds anymore. He was proof that those worlds had never truly been separate at all. They were all part of the same magnificent story, a story that would continue to unfold in the hearts of every person who discovered their own connection to the natural world, in every child who learned to listen to the forest's whispers, in every innovator who found ways to progress without destruction, and in every guardian who would follow in his footsteps, protecting the delicate balance that made all life possible. The forest that had once sheltered a lone baby on a cold night had grown into something far greater, a movement, a revolution, a new way of seeing the world. And as Ethan stood there, surrounded by love, purpose, and possibility, he knew that this wasn't really an ending at all. It was, as it had always been, just another beautiful beginning. Dear listeners, we hope this tale of Ethan's extraordinary journey has touched your hearts and opened your eyes to the magic that exists in our own world. The connection between humanity and nature is just as real as the one in our story, waiting to be discovered and nurtured by each of us. If this story has moved you, we invite you to become part of our growing community. Subscribe to our channel to join us on more magical adventures, leave a like to help others find this story, and share your own thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Together, we can create our own harmony between the modern world and the timeless wisdom of nature. We can't wait to embark on the next journey with you. Until then, may you find your own connection to the magic that surrounds us all.